This is Steve Young for the Co-Roundtable. I have done some comments on these short videos before about the intersection of climate change, global warming, technology, and capitalism. The simplistic thought I have is that it was basically capitalism, the Industrial Revolution, and human ingenuity, understanding the laws of physics, biology, to create things like steam engines, to figure out how to generate massive amounts of electricity, to use hydrocarbons, in all kinds of, to get energy to power things, automobiles, trucks, factories, et cetera, which have given us what? Lots of CO2 in the air, which does what? Under the laws of nature, it influences temperatures, and temperatures influence things like wind patterns and rain and stuff like that. So if we need to reduce the CO2 in the air, there are just a couple of steps, right? We have to put less of it up there, and maybe we should take some out of the CO2 that's already there. But to do those things, we need technologies. And I think there are lots and lots of people thinking and developing new technologies. And I have some examples I just want to share with you very briefly. The science is above my pay grade, but I just think we should be aware that these are out there. Then we got to figure out how you take something from a laboratory, put it into something that's a demonstration, a pilot project, and then scale it up. One of the new technologies is actually taking carbon dioxide, CO2, out of the air. The world's first commercial scale direct air capture, DAC plant, is being built in Texas. And what it does is it sucks carbon dioxide from the air, concentrates it, and makes it available for some use. For the DAC, it can be things for which humans already use CO2, adding carbonation to your drinks, spurring plant growth in greenhouses, or in Occidental's case, an oil company in Texas, to use in the ground to squeeze more drops of crude hydrocarbon, crude oil, from the deposits. But in this case, some 500,000 tons of CO2 that this DAC plant will capture annually, starting in 2025, will be pumped into the grounds and stored. So it's taken out of the atmosphere, and it will not re-enter the atmosphere as far as we know. That's a new technology. But somebody is going to have to invest to build the plants. Then, interestingly enough, there was another story about some young inventors, and they have their company, which they call 12 Carbon, I think. They have developed a process that they create a catalyst, which if you inject it with carbon dioxide under certain conditions, it breaks the carbon dioxide down into smaller bits, such as carbon here, oxygen there. And they only use water and electricity to recombine the elements and form other carbon compounds that can make a lot of different chemicals and fuels. So here's another new technology, a little small startup company, which can take the CO2, which say the DACs can pull out of the air, break it down into smaller things, recombine those into products that we can use to have the kind of lifestyle we want to have, but not pollute the atmosphere with CO2. There's another company which is trying to take old rubber tires and do something with them. And the rubber in the rubber tires mostly comes from hydrocarbons, so that if you burn them, you create more CO2 going into the atmosphere. But they're working on, again, a technology to turn the old tires into low carbon fuel. You still they still have carbon. You extract the carbon from the tires, but it's a low carbon fuel which can then be used to run carbon fuel driven engines, but at a lower rate. Then, however, there are technical problems which need to be solved. One is the electricity grid. This is, again, beyond my pay grade, but what I understand is our electricity grids to provide a steady source of electricity that you can use in your house for your cell phone, your lights, your refrigerator, for everything. You have a certain frequency cycle, like 50 cycles. But a lot of the new ways of generating electricity will generate electricity at either a higher cycle or a lower cycle. So there have to be transformers which have to be built, and some of them are very big and very expensive. And they have to interface between the generators of electricity and the electricity that goes into the grid. This is now raising the issue of who shall pay. Should your electricity costs go up so that the company that manages the grid will have more money to buy and install the transformers, so that you will get your electricity, but it will be generated in ways which are more concerned for global warming? Or should governments tax everybody, and governments pay for these things through subsidies? Or should the generators of the electricity in new ways, should they also have to pay for the transforming of the wattage of the and the alternating cycles of the electricity? So technology is just one part of the problem that needs to be solved. Another new technology which is being worked on, apparently there are 6 firms which are working on small fusion reactors. This was a surprise to me, because my understanding is that we do not yet have a fusion process which can generate reliable electricity. There was a recent attempt, and I think for half a second or something like that, the machine generated electricity, but it wasn't enough to it wasn't the equal of the electricity that had been consumed in order to create the heat to make the fusion possible. But again, where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's hope, there might be a will. And if we could then move to small fusion reactors, and link them up to the grid, and at the same time capture the carbon in the atmosphere, we might be able to get this whole problem of global warming behind us.